All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Buddhist Biohacker podcast and vlog, live streamed on YouTube. And for those of you listening in on the replay later on iTunes and Spotify, welcome as well. My name is Lisa Gunshore. I'm your host, as always, in this wild ride that we call living on the planet Earth, especially right now during this time and this year and this transition. And for everybody who's joining in the live, I see lots of folks joining in. You can absolutely ask questions, share comments, thoughts in the live chat. If you are watching later on YouTube, you can certainly continue to comment on the YouTube. And or if you're listening on iTunes and Spotify, we also have a private forum on MeWe. If you go to MeWe.com, Buddhist Biohacker, we have an entire forum in that private sacred 11D social media space. And here we go. So again, Buddhist Biohacker podcast, we are committed to creating conscious content and media for 11D reality. So here we are, and we are with one of my favorite guests, Sue Hunt. Hi, Sue.
Hi, good afternoon.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you back.
Love it. Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, I just love it. For those of you who are new to the program, Sue has been with us a few different times, and our topic today is a deep dive into the endocrine system. The reason being is that Sue did this incredible presentation on Buddhist Biohacker a couple weeks ago now about the endocrine system, the anatomy and the energy of the endocrine system. It was really fascinating and a lot of information. And so I asked her to come back and really dig into it a little deeper and talk about what we can do with that information to improve our health and our spirituality and our well-being, and to, open our feminine energy and all that good stuff. So thank you, Sue, again for just coming back and talking with us more about this topic.
I'm loving to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, me too. So for those of you who missed that episode, you can certainly grab it on YouTube or on iTunes and Spotify and watch the presentation. There's so much information. So Sue, we'll just briefly, just a quick summary of who you are and what you do, and maybe a quick summary on the endocrine system, which sounds ridiculous because it's so much to say, but maybe just a very brief like that, and then we'll really dig into it.
You bet. So my name is Suzanne Hunt. Many people call me Sue. I am an energy worker, minister for the Church of Infinite Spirit, and I am an intuitive and an energy healer. And so I came into my space of more energy awareness, I guess about 15 years ago, when I learned to meditate. Um, my story is prior to that time, I wasn't managing my space very well energetically, and I was absorbing energies around me and not making very good decisions. So I found when I learned to meditate that I could manage my boundaries, my energetic boundaries, so I could have my own self-awareness. And I also realized that that empathic dynamic in my energy field could be opened up and become my intuitive space. So I continued my training to open up my intuitive gifts and tone them, and I attended 3 clairvoyant schools here in Colorado and learned, compiled a suite of techniques and tools that I use with my clients and myself. And so that's a little bit about me. And the endocrine system is comprised of three energy centers, also small glands in the brain, the pituitary, the pineal, and the hypothalamus gland. And these glands work together as the master glandular system to control and manage the body. So they are receiving feedback from other glands in the system, like the thyroid, which is here at the neck, the thalamus, which is here in the upper chest, the pancreas, and the ovaries or testes, whatever your body is. So those glands are sending feedback up to the brain, and then the brain is using that to decide what's needed to maintain balance and equilibrium. and sending hormones and messages back down into the body. So they're a very important part of our mental space, our spiritual space, because our center of head is our connection to spirit, and also to manage our emotions, because a lot of the hormones that these glands generate uh, generate emotions, or generate feelings that create emotions. So we're in this constant flow, if you will, of the hormones that are being created combined with what we're thinking, and what we're feeling, and all of those dynamics are tied in together. But the very important leadership team, if you will, is up in the brain. And then, so that's the endocrine system, kind of in short. And maybe I'll talk about a little bit of the hormones before we go on.
Yeah,
But
do.
the hormones are a very important part of what particularly the pituitary is generating. So one reason we would like to keep these glands clean, and we like to keep them healthy, is the hormones that we have in our body have such an influence on our well-being. And there is a list of them that are called happy hormones, and I'd just like to briefly talk about those. Um, there's dopamine, which is called the reward hormone, and we feel pleasure at accomplishing something. And that pleasure from an accomplishment can help motivate us towards accomplishing something else. So it's a very good um, hormone to make us feel good about what's happening, and also supports our cognition. So our mental clarity is also supported with the dopamine. Oxytocin, which is sometimes called the love hormone, is creates a sense of bonding that we have with people, our loved ones, and also our pets. And it's the kind of hormone that's released during sex and when we're bonding with the loved ones. So it's really one that we feel over connection with others rather than shared ideas. It's not a mental kind of a thing, it's more of an emotional bonding. And it can make us feel drawn to someone, like someone we've never met before. We have that instant attraction, or a sense that we've known them before. That's the oxytocin working in our bodies. So endorphins, which is sometimes called the calm hormone, because it's released after exercise, and it can help us feel relaxed after our exercise. And then serotonin, the willpower hormone, which is kind of helps to stabilize our mood and our emotions, and it helps to boost our willpower and our self-esteem and our inner satisfaction. And and then there's one more, vasopressin, that is linked to peer bonding and social behavior, and it's particularly been studied around long-term monogamous relationships that we have, and so it's linked to creating the kind of energy in those relationships, and also supports memory. So all of these wonderful hormones that the brain, particularly the pituitary, is generating are an important part of um, our physical and our emotional and our spiritual connections. Um,
That's so much information, and part of why I asked you to be on today is selfish for sure, because I watched your presentation multiple times that was on our podcast before, and there's just so much to take in, and there's so much that the endocrine system itself manages. And I almost felt this overwhelming energy, like I was overwhelmed by looking at all of that, thinking, well, what do I do, and where do I even start? And I really looked at that first set of slides that you had brought up, and you were talking about the pituitary gland in particular. And this is an interesting gland, because for anyone out there who's done any psychic development, and you and I both went through a similar program coming from the Berkeley Psychic Institute and their own versions of that, and there's so much emphasis on the pituitary gland, right? It's in the center of your head, it's part of your clairvoyance, so on and so forth. And man, that thing is impacted by environmental toxins, and it's also creating so much of what's going on. And so one of the things that you talked about with the pituitary gland was the feminine energy. And I think that's such a great topic because it's the rise of the feminine right now. I mean, that's where we're at. And so I wanted to dig into that, you know, today and talk about first what your thoughts are, to kind of go deeper into the pituitary and how it manages the feminine energy. But when we talk about feminine energy, for those totally new to this topic, like what's the difference between feminine and masculine? Like, how does this all work? So
Sure. So when we all run both masculine and feminine energy, no matter what kind of body we have, or no matter what kind of, you know, disposition we have, or what kind of preferences we all have a balance, and our body generates the masculine and feminine kind of in a balance that's just right for us. And so we can think of the two as a little different. Our masculine energy is associated with the right side of the body, and it's more outgoing, it's action, it's accomplishing our goals, it's moving outward into the world. It's a wonderful energy. It's logical, it's structured. It's what brings a lot of that logic and structure into our lives. Um, we accomplish and create abundance in our lives with our masculine energy. It's important, and it gets a lot of attention in the world. And I think right now, as you're saying, where the world is opening up to the feminine side and bringing equal importance to both of those energies, because the feminine energy is associated with our left side of the body. It's about receiving, it's about surrender, it's about cooperation rather than competition. It's about our intuitive energy, and it's also in our connection to the intuitive and spiritual messages, and it's also connected with our creativity, our innovation, that free flowing energy that when we bring in new ideas. So creativity can be artistic work, but it can also be new ideas or trying out a new adventure or being willing to step into something new. So our feminine energy supports our nurturing. We might think of mother, the divine feminine as another way to look at it. Our generosity, it's gratitude, it's compassion, appreciation. And so both of these energies are a very important part of our dynamic in this world. And with the rise of the feminine that you're talking about, I think it's good to look at what is feminine energy, how can we strengthen it, and how can we open that up to support the glands in our brain.
well, I agree. And I wonder, you know, we're in the midst, I keep hearing the same idea with feminine energy, that the divine feminine rests in the unknown. And we are definitely there as a planet, you know, really walking into the unknown, you know, what is even coming, what's next. All of us as psychics and healers who normally look to the future are asking ourselves, wow, like we don't even have the clarity necessarily on what's coming down the pipeline 6 months to a year or more from now. And so how does the feminine energy and that acceptance of the unknown, like I just want to get your thoughts on it more. I think I don't even know if I have a question so much as I just want to talk about this feminine energy. You're talking about, you know, the grace and the acceptance of the feminine.
Yeah, great topic. So when I think of the divine feminine or feminine energy, one way to look at it is an empty cup. So when we let our cup be empty, as opposed to we've always got to have it full, and there's nothing wrong with having a full life with a full cup, but sometimes if we can allow it to be empty, we can allow ourselves to be open to the mystery of life. We can allow ourselves to be open to seeing life in a less structured way. Um, we, as you know, as an energy worker, Lisa, when maybe a good analogy would be a closet. When our closet is full, it's a little hard to bring in new clothes to wear. We almost
Mm-hmm.
have to clear out some of the old and leave some empty spaces in between and empty hangers, if you will, to trigger the energy for us to bring in something new. And that's as a similar way with life, when we can leave ourselves open to free flowing energy, then and let things be, let our universe be quiet, let our space be empty, that's when new creative ideas come in. Um, Sometimes I like to think of, so meditation is one way to be in that receptive, empty space. We can be in a space that's open and receptive and ready to take and allow any kind of a creative idea to come in. And sometimes I like to meditate that way, but other ways to connect in with the divine feminine might be just letting our mind be open and blank in any kind of other life scenarios. Sometimes I just like to sit on the couch and be in a space of not thinking or doing anything, but allowing myself just to be open. And I might have ideas come in. Oh, I forgot to call my friend Joanne, or I need to do some things and take care of that. And that might be all well and good. But other times I might start thinking about the creative ideas for a class, or what I'm going to be, what I might want to be doing with tomorrow or next week when a project's completed. Driving for me can be another way to connect in with that open space. If I'm driving and don't have, maybe I'm driving across town, or if I'm on a trip where I don't really have any goal set per um, any kind of a goal set, then I can just let my mind wander. And it's that wandering mind that can allow us to be in that space of empty. And so the world, as you said, is kind of in a space of empty right now. We don't know what's happening. And being with the unknown or the ambiguous or um, uh, an empty cup is sometimes can feel like a hard place to be for those of us that are a little more used to being structured. But it's a good exercise in being open to our feminine energy, because it helps us to gain that strength that we can move through any kind of a dynamic um, when things aren't planned or structured. And that can even apply to our relationships. I'll just add this before we move on, is when we could see our loved ones in a space of um, openness, or a space of undefined, or a space of um, emptiness, or a space of um, less structured, looking for a word here, then rather than static or fixed, we can see them as growing beings that are changing. We can also impact our relationships in that way. I mean, it's pretty common that we have with our husband for 5 years, or this is my family member that's been this way all his or her life, and we and it's one approach to say, yes, I can accept who they are, that's who they are, and I'm going to accept them. And that's a very gracious place to be. But also leaving them in a space to be open to change, then that relationship we have with them can grow and change, and can move away from being static. So there's lots of ways to look at how being with something undefined, ambiguity, um, can bring strength and creativity into our life.
I love that so much. And I think the key is being open, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think as a yoga instructor, all of the work that I've done, my family, we like naturally hunch. So it started out as I just want to have a straight back. That was how, right? Like that's how that started for me. But that journey has led me to fascia, to block therapy, to alignment yoga, to all of this deep work, and realizing that the slouching is actually ancestral trauma.
Ah,
It is closing you down so you don't want to be vulnerable, you don't want to be open, your heart is going inward. And so the thing that you're saying about the divine feminine, about being open, that's when all the magic happens, is when you sit in that open empty space. And when you brave it, and you're like, okay, I'm going to put my shoulders back. I'm going to, open my chest and see how that feels, which is really hard for women. I think a lot of us, this is hard to do. It feels scary.
Yeah.
And I think there's a reason for it, because it's like, oh my gosh, it's this exposure. And I remember this affirmation. I said this affirmation every day for years and years, but it was, vulnerability is my strength.
Oh, I love that. Oh my
Isn't
God.
that great?
Vulnerability is my strength.
Yeah, vulnerability is my strength. And you know me, Sue, we've known each other a long time. And that was a hard mantra for me. And over the years, what I learned was, when I stopped trying to control everything around me, and, everybody listening, I don't care what kind of spiritual work you are, this is one of our journeys, is the control energy, especially as a psychic. I almost think it's worse because you can see some of the future, right? I mean, haven't you experienced that, Sue, where it's like, you do know kind of what's going on, or the energy, or what clairvoyantly is happening. And then it's like even harder to control. Like, you want to control it more. It's like, ooh, I know this is going to happen, so I'm going to do this and that. And it never fails that you completely fall on your face when you try to control it. Right?
Yes, absolutely true. Absolutely.
Yes. And so I just think what you're saying about being open, in The Secret years ago, I mean, I would say The Secret's like 3D manifestation at this point. Like, 3D manifestation was, don't worry about the how. And I think the 5D, the 1111D, like, reality is what you're saying, which is be open to the complete unknown. It's not even being open to how things are going to be happening, but instead to be open to whatever is going to happen.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Um, and so that is, and I hadn't thought of it in that respect, but you're absolutely right. The rise of the feminine energy, tying in with the 3D, 5D, 11D, and our being, things are getting stirred up. Things are stirred up. Things are not the way they normally, the structure that we had is all gone. And so we're challenged with that. But when we can be present to those new elements that we're facing, is when we can find our grounding. And being present to what's happening is really the best way to take on any challenge, because when we're present, we're in our best intuitive space.
Mm-hmm.
When we're present, we're grounded, and we can take on any challenge as it comes up. So we bring our full awareness, our wisdom, our personal wisdom, and our intuitive wisdom. We bring all of these aspects of ourselves together, and we can move through what needs to be moved through. And also, we can be open to something new rather than seeing the static.
Yeah. And it's so like, where we have, I'm trying not to use have and need and should, it's where we want, it's where we choose to be at right now. I think we have to be there. Again, I'm saying have, we want to be there.
Well, and on that note, we have an agreement, and we have an energetic agreement to be here in this space. All of us on the planet now have a particular agreement. All of us on your summit that have come together for these teachings and these learnings that we're teaching and learning, we're all doing it. We have an agreement to be here. We have an agreement, if you will, for this lifetime and in this space that we're in right now, to be learning what this world is teaching us. And that's the way I like to look at challenges, is what am I learning from this situation? Um, because that's why we're having this situation, is so that we can learn something. What does it say about me? What's my capability? What's my perspective? How am I working with all of those dynamics as I move forward in life, what it is today?
Well, and isn't that interesting, because the being open to learning is still about being open.
Uh-huh.
When we say I know it all, or I don't need to learn. And I remember Julie Hoyle saying this a few weeks ago on a podcast. She said, it's that point where you say, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. And I just loved when she said that, because that's exactly what you're saying. And that goes back to that openness, being willing to say, I don't have all the answers. I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to learn about this person differently, or I'm ready to learn about the planet differently. I'm ready to see things differently. I was like adamant that I needed to eat meat like 2 months ago. I was like adamant. I'm like, I've been paleo keto. I know my genetics. I know what I need to do. And no joke, in the last 8 weeks, there's been so much spiritual evolution inside of myself and my husband. Actually, both Scott and I, we almost can't stomach meat. And suddenly I'm on this journey of, oh my God, like, how am I going to get what I need? Because my genetics are telling me I need XYZ. So how am I going to get that in a way that's humane and conscious and different? And that goes back to the openness. I think my point of that is, when you talk about being open, being willing to learn, you know, being comfortable in the unknown, is that moment where you have that consciousness shift where I have no idea how this is going to happen, but I just know that this is what needs to happen because this is what's coming in. And that is such a beautiful part of what is happening globally, because we really don't know what's next as a collective, and that has to be okay.
Exactly.
So how do we accept how do we accept, what do we do with our feminine energy? Like, so we talked about the endocrine system. We're talking about the endocrine system and all this, but like, your pituitary gland is influenced by, your third eye chakra. It's influenced by toxins. It's influenced all these things. So what do we do to open our feminine energy? Like, what are some of your suggestions to us when everyone's listening going, well, I don't know how to be vulnerable. I don't know how to be open, or I think I am, but I don't know. I mean, what are some things we can do? Besides, I loved what you said about sitting on the couch and being open, because I think I get my best visions, like the waves of true visions where spirit's showing you the future happens to me when I'm kind of floating in this unknown space.
Yeah, so the kind of unifying word I would use is non-goal oriented activities. So when we think about feminine versus masculine, masculine is very goal oriented, and feminine is receptive and non goal oriented. So when we start to, we can activate our feminine energy with non goal oriented activities. So I think that's one reason why sitting on the couch, just daydreaming, so to speak, can be a way of opening up that energy, because we have no goal at that moment. We're just sitting there, or laying across the couch, or whatever we're doing. So we're in that receptive space. Um, Meditation is a good example of a way a person can start to open and tap into that um, space, because typically there isn't a goal in meditation, but just being in that receptive space. Um, we can be so anything non-goal oriented and activating our receptivity. So one way to do that is in our conversation with our loved ones, coworkers, all the people of our life, is to listen more. We're in a world where we're constantly driven to, I've got to be sharing my ideas, I've got to present myself a certain way. I want to impress my boss. I want to impress the people on my work team or my husband. And we sometimes find ourselves listening with a little bit of a cognitive part of us waiting for what we want to say or what we want to answer, which is okay. But when we can listen more deeply, maybe asking questions to clarify, for the person to clarify what it is that they're saying, or more about their experience or how they felt. We can kind of open ourselves to really be in that learning space, be in that receptivity, and we allow ourselves to be in a compassionate space too with that person. So listening deeply in our relationships can be one of the most um, uh, beautiful gifts we can give our loved ones, because they get a chance to be heard, and then we can train ourselves, as I was saying, to be receptive. Um, some other ways are connecting with the arts. If somebody enjoys being creative in drawing or painting, it can be cooking or gardening or whatever a person does, hiking out in the wilderness. Being outdoors is another one. So, opening up your creative energy by doing creative things, even if it's singing, dancing, yoga could be one where we're, letting those energies flourish. Um, Getting out into nature. And I know you're a person who loves nature. I see lots of postings, and you're out there, outdoors with Scott and sometimes the kids. And nature is uh, has an energy about it that's nourishing to our bodies. Where we're in the city, and we've got all the structure, and we've got all this resistant energy around us. Nature is non resistant. And so we can be open to our divine wisdom if we're on a hiking trail or we're just sitting in the sun. Being in nature in and of itself can help connect us with our inner selves and our ability just to receive the birds that are singing or the waves coming in off the shore. Uh,
Mm.
I never
You make
remember.
it sound so, I'm like ready to go. Let's go.
Yeah, I remember when we went to Hawaii a few years ago, and we did all these things, but my most cherished memories were, being on the beach and just watching and listening to that water crash up against the shores, or when we hiked up to the top of a little um, castle of sorts and looked out over the whole peak from this higher space. So being in nature is really a good way. And then another great way to open up the energy of feminine is to accept and allow our feelings to process. When in this day of this world we live in, it's very common, maybe in our work scenarios, maybe even our family with certain family members, we may not feel like we can share emotions that we want to share. We might find ourselves tapping those down or stuffing them a little bit. And the emotions are really the truest, most sincere part of who we are. And so when we start stuffing our emotions, we are stuffing our feminine energy. We are stuffing that part of us that's it. The emotions are part of our intuitive guidance system. So processing our emotions, however we want to do that, whether it's journaling, whether it's just allowing ourselves to feel them and let them process, is a wonderful way to be in touch with ourselves and be receptive. Um, because when we bottle in our emotions, we tend to create mental chatter that goes on in the brain. And then those thoughts go round and round, and they're kind of captured in there. And that mental activity is dulling to our senses, it's dulling to our spirit, it's dulling to our feminine energy. So um, releasing them in a natural, um, constructive way would be a really good thing to do.
Yeah, I love that so much. And, I think part of nature being such a huge part of that is I really feel passionate about our great mother, Mother Earth. And I feel that she's always been there for us.
Yeah.
She wants us to connect with her. And when you go into nature and you feel her presence,
Mm-hmm.
it's it does create openings that were never there before. And I've had all these kind of thoughts thinking through this time about my life and bringing me to this point. And even as a kid, and I wrote about it so many times in my book, my editor was like, you got to take some of this out because I've talked so much about the same spot. But I sat at this oak tree by my house and I would smell the moss and I would sit with my journals and I'd write. And I think like even all those years ago, intuitively as a young adult, I mean, I was 12, 13, 11, 12, 13, probably, you know, nature has brought me into a creative space. And I don't know about you, but like when you go into nature, suddenly writing ideas, a lot of I channel, almost all of my channeled messages each month come from being outside. I have a notebook I'll bring sometimes, but I also have a little notes app on my phone. And I have my phone on airplane mode when I'm hiking, but I do bring it and I type in everything that spirit has to say. And it's just such an amazing thing because Mother Nature is the full magnitude of the divine feminine. Don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. The all of the trees and the soil and everything is so non-resistant and feeds our soul. And we get away from it's also typically a space to get away from maybe some of the busyness. So it's also the um, it's unstructured. It's although we might have a building or a cabin or a place we're going to, but typically we're in an unstructured place where we can open up that divine intuition, that divine spirit, that connection with what's real. What's really
Mm-hmm.
real. I love that your channelings come from nature. I didn't know that. That's beautiful. It's
Oh
really
yeah, when I'm full trance channeling, which is different. I think probably for people who are new to the program, like the best way to say it is, getting clairvoyant information, seeing images and pictures and things like that is one thing, or reading cards, cartomancy, like that all gives us information. But channeling is really spirit, source, high self, however you want to call it, coming through you and coming down, giving you information and verbiage. It's very different from what you would say yourself. And so yeah, when I'm trance channeling, it's always in nature. It's very rare that I would be inside doing it, to be honest. And when I channel my monthly flows for the membership group on Ajata Kasha, I go on a hike and pull information all throughout the month. So really throughout the month, each month I'm like getting information. But yeah, it's from nature because that's a place where I think for me, I can be most peaceful.
Mhm.
And it brings me to like one of the things I want to talk about because, part of the endocrine system is the toxicity. And we've come up with this hashtag vision for our planet, and we're creating a vision board on Instagram for our planet. And one of the things when I really thought about, well, what is my vision for the future, is I want watches to go away. That the construct of time, the time construct is man-made, right, Sue? You know that.
Yeah.
It's man-made. It's a man-made construct. And I just think it needs to go. And I would like to get back to a time where you're looking at the sun and the moon and the stars to figure out what day it is, what season it is, what time it is, to go back to our natural circadian rhythms. And with everything you've shared about the pituitary gland, all these different systems, what is the impact of managing yourself, your time, your day to day through Mother Nature's time managers versus all the electronics and watches and devices and iPads and computers and alarms and all these other things.
Yes, so all the computer, the EMFs, which is the electromagnetic field, um, so we've got our cell phones, we've got our wireless devices, the TVs, we've got the microwaves, we've got the computers, we've got everything around us, we've got the cell towers, we've got the big heavy um, electrical lines and whatever outside our window or down the street that are carrying, all of these waves. And these things impact our brain in a really huge way. So we're not going to get away from those things completely, but a good thing to do to protect our brain and to help keep this part of ourselves healthy is to reduce our exposure to those things. When you're running the microwave, don't stand in front of it.
Mm.
Otherwise, when if you can all possible, we try to warm things up in a pan. Um, if you can have your devices turned off at night so that when you're sleeping, those waves aren't coming into your bedroom. A good place to keep your computer or your desk would be out of the bedroom if possible. So they do harm the pituitary, and they're particularly disruptive to the pineal gland.
Mm.
And I know we're focusing on the pituitary today, but those energies are harmful to the body. And I think more research will be made when, in years to come, where we find out um, how harmful they are and what we need to do to clear them.
Hmm.
And so other things can help our brain, other healthy things like getting enough sleep, eating a healthy diet. You were talking about diet a minute ago. I don't know if you're ready to go there.
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, but getting away from pesticides and chemicals, all of these elements store in the body and prevent those glands as well as the rest of our bodies from functioning optimal in the most optimal way. So, for example, you've got your thyroid and your adrenals that are managing our levels of energy. And in some small way, all of these glands in the body are affected by those radiation types of energy. And so uh, radiation energy as well as chemicals in our food. Um, there are pesticides in a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we eat that are harmful to the endocrine system. There's easy information. If we can buy organic, let me say that first. If we can buy organic, that is the best thing, choices we can make. But maybe we can't always buy our organic. We can look up online and find the Dirty Dozen. There's a few of those vegetables and fruits that are um, tend to have more pesticide on them, like potatoes, apples, grapes come to mind. I always try to buy those organic if possible. And then, but you can look them up. The Dirty Dozen or the Clean 15 are the ones that are a little less pesticide ridden, just maybe by the way they need to grow.
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking like, it was a radical shift for me in 2011, and you were there for all of that, really, to go to get off gluten and dairy and sugar and processed foods. And I'm feeling that radical shift now with the way that the planet's changing. I'm curious how you're feeling about it with not even just buying organic, but I feel like between the farmers markets, like going and finding the farmers that are local and nearby and building a relationship and saying, listen, like I am not in a, I know, Sue, you're a green thumb and a gardener. You have a beautiful garden and you're so lucky. And I might just have to buy vegetables from you. But like, I feel compelled to, I've got to figure out how to grow a plant. That's like number one for me. But that aside is, knowing where your food comes from has become of great value to me this year in particular. I've been buying organic and non-GMO, but there's almost this radical step now, this whole next like step of if I can't grow it, I need to know who's growing it and where it's coming from. And I found a great website called eatwild.org, and it tells you in your state all the local farms.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, it's so great. There's a farm outside of Grand Junction that is all grass-fed, pasture-raised animals, and it's clean, conscious kill. They take care of them all themselves, and you can go there and buy like a side of beef if you want clean meat. And I found a bee pollen, a bee keeper down the road who has honey and bee pollen and things like that. And so there's this idea of local, and I know you grow a lot of vegetables. And so what are your thoughts about that radical shift in this time of like going to that kind of sustainability in your life?
Yeah, definitely going to the farmer's market would be one way to get next to the growers. I think that's an excellent idea. We do have a garden, and I just love being able to go down and pick the produce and then, make a salad with it. We have one area of the garden that when I first moved here, I was a little dismayed because it was kind of in the shade. And I'm like, well, how am I going to get anything to grow there? But I was really grateful when I realized that my lettuce, I was able to grow lettuce all summer long
Mm.
so that I could go pick it and, wash it up and have it for dinner. But next best thing would be just like you're saying to the farmers market. They do have in some cities, and I don't know if they have it here, but I'm intrigued to check it out with the
Yeah.
things that you're saying, is they have these cooperatives. And sometimes you can go become part of a co-op where they will deliver a box full of organic, homegrown vegetables, whatever they have, and then you can use those for your cooking that week. So, talk about being in a space of receptivity when you're in the kitchen cooking. Whatever I get in my box, okay, that's what we're going to eat this week. So, I'm going to build some recipes around it. But, um, but yeah, I think as human beings, we need to get back to um, a healthier way to find food that is nutritious, free from pesticides and chemicals, and so that we can keep our bodies healthy for longevity and to become disease free and to keep in our intuitive and our keep our energy high, our metabolism and our energy balanced and in a good space. And
Mm.
another place that I want to mention is we have sometimes, housing the kinds of chemicals in our homes. I know you had a huge experience with this, as did I at one time last year, the year
Mm-hmm.
before. And so chemicals from, furniture, from new carpet, from a new car, being just conscious about these things to make sure they're properly aired out or to use what tools we can to protect our health are good things to watch out for.
Yeah, keeping your air clean. I have air filters in my home. I have water filters on my shower. Um, but it's funny because with all the years of spiritual work that you and I have done, individually, together, I mean, all those years, you go into it. I think both you and I went into it with belief systems and gifts we wanted to develop. But I also think there's a lot of people who go into it wanting to develop those gifts. And I believe everybody is psychic. And so, regardless of where you're at on the development journey, I can tell you that I believe the number one way to open your psychic abilities is your diet.
Hmm.
Like, you want to detox, to clean up your diet, to become natural, to clear out the chemicals and the toxins, because that makes you a clear channel for the divine.
Absolutely. And I know you have offered some wonderful detox diets out on your
Mm-hmm.
platforms before. People can use something like that. There's a spectrum. And sometimes people might say, well, it's too hard to change my diet radically. But we can take baby steps to start moving that direction. Warm up things in a pan before we put them in the microwave. We can um, take steps to eat less pesticides, buy more homegrown, or get to the farmer's market in the summertime. We can look for the organic to the best that we can afford it and just make conscious choices. There are liver, a number of liver and kidney detox supplements that you can find in the health food store, where they would have these packages, and they're really herbs that help clean out the system for people who may not be able to make a radical change in their diet. So I would say look at the spectrum to what you can be comfortable with and what you can maintain and sustain, because doing something for a little while is good, but we're going to get more health out of things that we can maintain over a longer period of time. So if I can simply buy organic and I can keep that as a practice, that's going to help. Or if I can choose organic most of the time, or I can do a detox, or maybe someone who has a little more incentive can change their diet more radically and do a total clean out. That would be an excellent way to tune in to the psychic, because we are a mind body connection. And that
Mm-hmm.
happens in the presentation that we're referencing back to. The hypothalamus gland in the brain actually makes that mind body connection. So it's real, and it's a real part of what's happening over our nervous system and the feedback that's coming up to the brain, and then what instructions the brain is issuing, and all of these things, um, these conversations in the body are happening, and if they're dulled or diminished by health circumstances, um, then that can get in the way of our having our psychic and intuitive abilities. And some things we can help and change, and others we can't. So I would say look for the things that you can change, make small changes that your family can adopt easily, and then keep growing that change to get a clean diet, healthy lifestyle, so that we can be in our best physical space.
I love it. That's a great way to end. How fast does an hour go?
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's done.
Yes. And that's a great way. I mean, and I think, if you're open to it, Sue, I think all of us in the community and myself would love to continue our deep dive discussion, because we didn't even get very far.
We could do
Which
another, yeah, we could do another one for
we could
sure.
do a few, because it's great conversation, because it's the understanding. I mean, part of why I called this Buddhist Biohacker, truly, this channel, this podcast, is because biohacking is all about the science and the data and the information, much to your presentation, the anatomy of the endocrine system, right? But the Buddhist portion is the spiritual portion of really looking at how the body, mind, and spirit connect together, because you can get the data, you can analyze the data, you can take the supplements, but if you're not connecting that spiritually, then you're not getting the whole picture, and the change won't be long term. It won't be sustainable. We talk about having a sustainable future. It comes from doing work that brings all of the aspects together, the body, the mind, the spirit coming together into one space. That's what it does. And so I think it's important.
Absolutely.
I love you so much. So Suzanne Hunt,
Yeah.
Sue, give everybody, it'll be in the show notes too, but give everybody your website so they know how to get in touch with you.
Yes. So my website is www.energetichealingarts.com. And if you'd like to join my newsletter, you can go out to first of all, you can go out to my website and read more about the work I do and a little bit about energy work. And then you can add your name to my newsletter. And when you do that, I'll be sending out a spiritual message about once a month with just an uplifting couple of paragraphs to brighten your day and to give you an uplifting thoughts that you can carry to. Uh, I like to help my clients and students keep their vibration high. So I think we can do that largely with our thoughts. We've been talking about something else, but largely with our thoughts we can do that. So I'll give you some spiritual food for the month. So
I
thank you
love
very
that.
much, Lisa.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys can go to lisamgunshore.com and it pops right up to download the free indigo flow, natural detox, and intuitive diet if you're interested in that. And thank you so much, Sue. It's been just a pleasure. Thank you to everyone who's been watching, and you can continue to follow this discussion as well as many others on MeWe.com at Buddhist Biohacker. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining, and we'll be back tomorrow with Christian Strang talking about living in the new reality. So thanks so much, Sue. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.